This is a shakedown. Order up that beat just like a steak.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Unemployable, episode 6. Today I am here with Julia, who goes by Jem Roberts. She is the woman who takes your girl you lost the plot life moments and turns them into mythic comebacks. If you haven't followed her on LinkedIn, I will link her profile below in the show notes, and you definitely should, because she is fighting in the content machine in a really real way. She also is huge on astrology, so I might have her do my chart reading today if anybody cares to hear about that. So, Jem, tell us just a little bit about you, where you come from, why you're being so active on LinkedIn, what's your passion?
Where I come from, why I'm active on LinkedIn, and what my passion is. So I come from a family of storytellers. My great-great-grandfather is the founder of the Smoky Mountains National Park.
Wow.
So he
That's a claim
used
to fame.
It is. And so we didn't have national parks until the Great Smoky Mountains became a thing. And that wasn't achieved without the success of his ability to tell the stories of the Cherokee people in a way that, let's be real, white people were willing to listen to. And I'm certainly not saying that my grandfather saved anybody, but he was able to achieve something that hadn't been achieved before and has set a precedent in our country for what we expect our world to carve out space for, which is that this space needs to be kept sacred and untouched as much as possible. And that is a rare agreement these days. Everything is let's extract as much as we can out of this person, out of this place, out of this river, out of this tree. And my dad's side is also very much, they're storytellers. They're artists, they're creatives. And I think that's where I would say I would come from. I'm from Virginia originally, and we have a lot of ties to Virginia history, to Virginia's land. And I definitely feel very much called to stay in Virginia, from, the James River to the York River to the Potomac River. They all feel like places where I come back home in different ways. I'm active on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is a funny, funky place. I posted something earlier this year about my job search and how I had put in 300 plus applications in 3 months, and it got over 300,000 impressions in 24 hours.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I wasn't expecting it at all. But I come from the world of UX, UI, user experience nonsense. And I was just kind of ripping them a new asshole about about the fact that there's no UX continuity in the hiring process at all. And we're not actually building any platforms that help anybody. And I was coming at it from that angle, plus my own personal frustrations. But I've also found it to be a really interesting place that people are wanting precise language about what's happening. They want and are seeking clarity because the stakes of not having a job are so high.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have a job, aren't making money. You're not just going to necessarily lose food on the table or night's sleep. You're possibly going to lose custody of your kids. You're possibly going to have to put your pet in a shelter because you can't feed them. You're possibly going to lose your home and have to move into your car and all of the things that come with that, losing all your possessions, your plants, your everything. And so I think because the stakes are so high for people right now and the consequences are so real, it's really nice to be able to speak out about things from my point of view, which usually gets called you're splitting hairs. This is not, you don't need to be this specific. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's been really nice to be able to communicate in a way that's natural to me, that people are noticing and knowing why it's necessary to be so specific. it's
Yeah.
this and it's this and it's this, and like pulling it all apart because it's been like compounded. All of the problems have been compounded for so long that people want to open it up and look at all of the nuances and all of the details. And that's where my work is always, it's always in the details. Like I'm
Yeah.
very detail and process oriented. And so I really enjoy being able to just
Mhm.
talk openly on LinkedIn. And I think that also answers the question, like, what am I passionate about?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about people having clarity and people owning their own story and being able to say it in a way that translates back to the rest of the world.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting you say picking it apart because everybody wants, all of us want to know, no matter what industry we're in, why the hiring process has turned into something that is just so inefficient and unpersonal. And it helps to understand why, because there's so many different pieces of it that make it what it is. It's all in these tiny little details that all add up into something huge. And I love that you said that because really is a way, I think, for people to feel a little bit better about what's going on. Because if one of those little things relates to their industry or relates to them, it's an understanding of why this is happening. I don't know if it's going to get better or not. I think that there are a lot of us, the more we talk about it, the more, value we give it, I think, but it's a hard thing to swallow right now. How long have you been looking?
Since March of this year,
And how many interviews have you had? 4.
and over 500 job applications.
Yeah, I just saw a post yesterday that, what was the number? It was like 60% of the jobs on LinkedIn were, they call them phantom jobs. They're not real. And this was an actual study done. I forget where it came from. I want to say Columbia or some Ivy League schools, like looking into these job listings, because it's really important that all these job listings are real, because this data feeds into national data, which then the country gets statistics on unemployment, how many people have acquired new jobs, how many people haven't let go. And so all of this data is really important. And if you're telling me that 60% of the jobs are not real, then that means that 60% of the data is wrong. And I think that a lot of people don't, if you're not looking for a job right now, you do not know the state of, we are in a recession. Clearly we're in a recession. But if you're not out here job searching, sending applications, you have no clue. I have friends who have jobs, they have no clue, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so enough depressing stuff.
I was just like, as you were talking, like my brain is just like, it's all systems. And, when you're not in a system, when you're in your own little bubble, you don't have to think about the job market, and you
Right.
don't think about it in a systemic way. But as soon as
Right.
you realize that you're in it, you have to become familiar with all the parts and relationships that are interwoven. And pretending that it's not what it is and that all these tiny pieces don't relate is like a giant gaslighting effect that we're all going, no, not buying it.
Right. Agreed. I think that people want to sit in their pretty little offices, with their pretty little coworkers, and not realize what's happening on the outside. But I feel like the more we talk about it, the more power we give it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's really important for everybody to speak up. I know a lot of people are scared. A lot of people have come at me and told me, I'm never finding a job because of the way I talk on LinkedIn. And you know what? That's fine. I'm okay just freelancing with people who get me and understand where I'm coming from than working for the man who, is not helping anybody. But yeah, it's a sad reality right now. It really is.
Yeah, there's a lot of grief in it. It's when you land in this world, you grieve your pretty office.
Yeah.
And then you have the secondary grief of not being able to get back to the pretty office, and that your friends have the pretty office, but they don't understand why you don't have one. And
Right.
it feels isolating and othering. And like, how am I going to have important significance? How do I matter? I feel like I don't matter. That's what happens to me, is it's really hit that wound of rejection and uh, incompetence and not good enough. And it's been, I'm not trying to give it more power. I'm trying to,
Right.
say this is how it's affected me.
Yeah. I think that also as a country, I feel like we kind of need to change the narrative. Like sitting in a pretty office doesn't make you more powerful than somebody who's not. I feel like we have this idea of who we should be and how things should play out in our lives. And when they don't, we get so upset instead of looking at it and saying, well, what if I turned left instead of right? Everyone's telling me my whole life, turn right, go straight, do this, do that. But what if you didn't? What would happen?
Yeah.
The world's not going to end.
In the 1950s, everyone had the white picket fence. It was an image, it was a symbol, it was a story, everything. And now, in what we see is people trying to do the same thing with the American flag and saying, this is what America is. And like, this is what it stands for. And it's not enough of a symbol of,
right.
It's always been so ambiguous in that it has big sweeping claims of freedom and independence and pursuit of happiness for all. Like there's so many ways to interpret that. And we need a white picket fence that embodies all of us and allows all of us to turn left, as you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that, it can be really polarizing too when you're trying to find purpose in something that people or everyone around you has told you that you should find purpose in and you just don't anymore.
We're going to find our story.
Yeah. The reason why I started doing this is because I wanted to help people feel less alone. Tell us how you got involved with Shit Show Creative and with Justin.
Well, that's a funny story. So I had been just scrolling on LinkedIn and he had his hiring banner on, didn't know him, connected to him. He had commented on something or someone had commented on a post that he had, how LinkedIn does their algorithm. And so I went and he had this statement like, I can't connect with anybody because I have too many connections. So if you want to connect with me, you're going to have to pursue me. Something to that effect. And so I connected with him on LinkedIn. I went and looked at his website for Shit Show and I saw that there was like an opportunity to send him a message or send the company a message. And I went, he'll probably never see this because they probably get 1,000 messages all the time and they don't open them. And he called me personally afterwards and was like, so you realize that Shit Show was a joke, right? And I was like, no, I didn't realize that. And this was like, I had contacted him in May, when he started Shit Show, really truly as a joke.
So you were like at the beginning. Okay.
Yes. And so he really had just started it as a joke and it had been up for like a week or two at this point. And he was like, yeah, everyone thinks it's real. And like, we actually want to make something out of this. And so, I was like, dude, you need a Substack. Like your shit is funny. Like, and you should have a newsletter where you can like do multimedia. You can connect with like that space and that ecosystem and like monetize what you're doing without having to lose any money because you don't have to invest anything to make any money in Substack besides your time and your energy and your writing and your vulnerability. And he was like, oh, I don't know anything about Substack. And can you tell me about like how it works? So I ended up sending him his tutorials on how to use Substack, like from the strategy, the tech, the back end integrations, like how does it all work? How can you strategize this? How can you utilize this tool? Where would you want to do this? This is how I like to do this. And I just sent it to him. Like I sent him 3 little videos pretending I was Miss Frizzle. A ayahuasca trip. It was totally nuts. Could hear my dog throwing up in the background. Chaotic stuff. Very Justin. And so then he was like, do you want to just do this for me, with me? And like, you can be our Substack editor and I will pay you. And I was like, yes, absolutely. Of course. It's a small gig, but it's been so meaningful and so much fun because literally what you were talking about, of feeling respected by our platform and what we do. I literally wrote a piece last night about Zorhan Madami's design work that went into his campaign and how aesthetics are a form of respect. And when we take the time to craft something with somebody, we're showing them that we respect them because we are doing it with intention and we're making it beautiful. And that means that it has meaning. And at the same time, I'm getting emails to my shit show inbox with messages from people about how this editing process is so meaningful to them. That's how I got involved with shit show. Is I fell for the joke and then was just like, yes, let me tell you everything that I think you should know about Substack. And then he was like, whoa, you think really logically. And I can see how valuable this is, but it's so technical. I can't follow it.
Overwhelming. It's overwhelming for sure. Even when I started my Substack, it was so overwhelming. I was like reading all these tutorials and like, how do you get the website to look the way you want it to? And you can't control that because it kind of auto-populates your articles that you write. So you just have to write a bunch of articles and then you can change the way it looks. So you have to have information first and then you can design it, which as a designer, that was like really pissing me off.
Yeah, you have to have the content to fill it in.
Yeah.
You just have to set up your tags and then you can organize them horizontally or vertically or however it is that you want to do that. But
yeah. So
like
that's so amazing. I love that you put yourself out there because a lot of people are, I think, still very hesitant to just cold email or write somebody that they don't know. And it worked out so well. It works out so well for so many people. And just to have a real story, of how it worked out for you is amazing. Say you're interviewing someone and he worked at Apple. Oh, I know him. He worked at Apple. I know exactly how he designs. I know who he is. Oh, you have this girl. She's only worked for nonprofits. I know exactly who she is. I know how she designs. And then they make these like snap judgments about people. And I feel like that's also a big problem right now in our industry where people are looking at a portfolio and they're going, oh, I know them. I know who they are. It's like, you don't know us. You've never spoken to us. You don't know how our thought process goes, how we design, how we combat problems. And those snap judgments are just making for really bad policy throughout our industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it feels like art school critique all over again, where like you're being invited, like you're putting your work up on the wall and you know you're about to get roasted by everybody standing next to you because that's what you all have been trained to do is to like pick the damn piece apart and make judgments about it in an effort of making it better because none of us know how to do editing work without criticizing.
I mean, oh my God, that's like such a valid, brilliant point. I mean, that's what we were taught in art school, to rip it apart and find the flaws to make it better. But what if we came at it from the other angle and we looked at all the good parts? I mean, picked apart all the good parts. I mean, made the good parts even better than they already are. There's a different way to approach a problem than we've been taught. And I think that everyone's kind of just like stuck in this stalemate.
Yeah. And art school is a really, really distorted worldview that you are required to swallow the Kool-Aid. Like the Kool-Aid, it's so distorted. Like you don't make money or you're not an artist, but don't not get a job as an artist because then you're not an artist. And you can only be creative if you look a certain way, do things a certain way. Yeah.
Right. Like lately, that's all I've heard. I mean, I had a creative director tell me, it was like round 4, and he was like, I really liked you. Everyone who you met really liked you, but the client wants the guy who came from Apple. It just, that's how it is now. I can't change that alone. You can't change that alone, but together we have a louder voice. We're louder together. And I think that that's what I'm trying to say on LinkedIn. If we all band together and if we all keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, we will get someone to listen. Somebody with power, because I'm not delusional. Like, I know that I don't have power right now, but somebody who does have power, somebody with power might see all of these collective voices talking about the same thing together. And then maybe there can be a change. But until then, we just have to keep, being loud.
Yeah, it has to become a cultural movement that moves from social media to real-time media to real-time conversations with powerful people. That's the movement that's what a movement does. It mobilizes things across the content stream up channel. You want me to read your chart? I need the day you were born, the year you were born, the place you were born, and the time you were born. That's it.
So I was born November 3rd, 1982. In Plantation, Florida at 9:31 a.m.
So our sun signs are where we draw a lot of our vitality from, right? And they're really easy to measure because they're set to specific time blocks. When you get out of any other planet or celestial being, or celestial body, the timing is not so easy to measure. You need these kinds of graphics and tools because the moon is changing signs every 2.5 days, and it completes around the sun every 28.5 days, right?
Mhm.
And then the rising sign is not a planet at all. Moon signs are, the moon is in movement constantly. It's moving from sign to sign every 2.5 days. The rising sign is ticking along in real time, minute to minute to minute to minute. So when we are looking at this rising sign, which is over here on the left-hand side, where we see this black line and the little letters ASC, right? That's the ascendant. And what we're looking at here is the compression of time and space and movement into from a 3D, 4D map into a 2D collapsed image.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah. So you could imagine this as like, if you were to pull it apart as our solar system, right? With the sun in the middle and Mercury and Venus and Earth. And like, we're all out here in concentric circles, all moving on different timelines, right? But on Earth, we have a set way of experiencing time because we live on Earth. I mean, Earth rotates every 24 hours. And it completes a year-long cycle of 365 days. And the ascendant is connected to the descendant, which is over here. These are exactly the same. So this is 18 degrees in Sagittarius, 18 degrees in Gemini. So every ascendant has its partner of the descendant in the exact degree and opposite sign. So Sagittarius.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's super cool.
Yeah, they're partners, just like East and West. They're poles. They cannot be separated. They must have that tension.
Wow. So, and Sagittarius and Gemini, they're so different.
They are, but the thing that's the same about them is they are both extremely curious about the world, but they come at it in different ways. So this is the ascendant is your Eastern sign. It's on the left-hand side. The chart is flip-flopped east-west to what we normally look at. We normally look at maps where the Eastern point is over here, but you have to remember we're looking at the sky. No, we're not looking down at Earth on the map. We're looking up. And then there are two other really important directions, right? We have east-west and north-south. That's how we determine where we are in the world. This is your northern point. Yours is at 0 degrees Virgo or 0 degrees Libra. What is this? That looks like it's moving into Libra. Okay, so you have your northern point in Libra and your southern point in Aries. And these are based off of as the time is moving, as the earth is moving in the place that you were born, where were the locations of east, west, north, south in the sky. And what this does is it helps us orient to what direction we're supposed to take in life. So astrology used to be very much tied to astronomy, right? Astrology and astronomy were ways that we found direction in the world. There's so many people who literally crossed oceans by the stars. But it's also a way that we kept calendar rhythms before we had truth. The morning star Isis was visible in the sky. The Egyptians knew that the Nile was going to flood within 2 to 3 days, as an example. So with your ascendant being in Sagittarius, you are, the way that we interpret the Eastern point is our life and death place, right? It's where we it's our most intimate internal experience of ourself. And then the descendant is how we reach out and touch everybody else, how we connect to the world. This is the space of me, myself, and I. This is called a house in astrology. And this is the seventh house. The seventh house is all of our relations.
Wow. So I internalize myself as a Sagittarius, but I present myself as a Gemini. Is that what that means?
So it's more about, the signs are kind of like flavor profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever had vanilla on shrimp?
No, that sounds disgusting.
Sounds disgusting, right? It's apparently amazing, and it doesn't taste like sweet vanilla like how we imagine it. It's an Oaxacan dish, and it is really savory and totally mind-blowing because of how we associate vanilla and shrimp. They work really well together. And so signs are kind of like vanilla. They're kind of like a spice. It really depends on what else they're interacting with. If you're putting cumin on chicken or cumin in hummus, it's both cumin, but it's not necessarily going to be the same.
This is so cool.
dish.
I love that. Okay. Yeah.
So what we actually really want to look at is the house first, what the house represents, and then the planets that are in the house, because the house is like, you live in Fort Lauderdale. The sign is like, you live in Fort Lauderdale in a house, or maybe you live in an apartment, or maybe you live in a duplex. So the sign represents the more intimate way that you are existing within a larger cultural theme.
When you say house, what do you mean by that?
These sections, these like pizza shaped sections where there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So those are all called houses, and they like represent a segment of the sky. And then if there are planets inside of it, that's what we want to look at first, is what planets are there, and then what sign are they in.
So what are those purple lines where like all the planets are kind of surrounding?
The purple lines, these ones right here.
Yeah.
These are aspects that are occurring between these planets in Capricorn and these planets in Libra. And this is called a sextile aspect. And that's when the planets are 60 degrees apart.
So what does that mean for my profile?
So the interactions are happening between Saturn and Pluto, and Mars and the southern node. In Saturn and Pluto are in the 11th house, and Mars and the southern node are here in the 2nd house. This is in the sign of Capricorn. This is in the sign of Libra. Libra and Capricorn having Mars in Capricorn is somebody who has achieved a mastery of motivation in the world. But they also, when Saturn and Pluto come into relationship with Mars, there's also a restrictive energy to what can be accomplished. It's kind of like there are many moments in the world where you start butting up against stuff and you're like, there should not be a wall here. And you like keep banging into that wall until you start going, oh, wait, I can also swim. Oh, wait, I can climb up this wall. Oh, wait, I can do this. I don't have to keep trying this one avenue, but you're not somebody who's going to give up on that avenue. But having Saturn in the 11th house, this is indicative of, this tends to be somebody who struggles with friendships, being disappointed in friendships often, or feeling like lonely even inside of friendships or inside of networks, and wanting to be of service and be a leader and really connect and pull people together and like make them all feel like they're unifying towards something valuable and important, but also feeling like they're just not meeting enough of the right people to accomplish that sometimes.
Wow, that's pretty accurate. That's crazy. Okay, so what's this red line?
That is called an opposition line. So what, like we were talking about, the ascendant always has an opposite pole. right, of the western point of the descendant. That's called an opposition, where they are at the exact opposite of each other. They're not going to move. They're always going to be in polarity. But that tension is really important because it creates something important in the middle. And so what is happening in this opposition is the planet Uranus opposing your moon in Gemini. So Uranus is the planet that represents, so let me backtrack just a little bit. So there are 10 celestial bodies that we tend to look at in astrology. There's the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. These are personal planets. These are planets that operate either slightly quicker or slightly slower than Earth's timeline. So they're impacting us personally because they're in motion with us. Jupiter and Saturn are much, much further away than Mars is. And Mars is pretty freaking far away. They complete an orbit once every 20 years for Jupiter and once every 30 years for Saturn, which is why we have all of these things like Saturn returns, Jupiter returns, because they represent more initiations of our life cycle. So like every 30 years, you're going to have a Saturn return. Think about what happens between our lives when we turn 30 versus when we turn 60 versus when we turn 90, right? Or when we're 20, 40, 60, 80. Like these are very different chapters of our lives that we recognize as life stages.
Right.
But when you get to the planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they're moving like 80 years to our year, 200 years to our year. So they're generational and they have a much slower sweeping effect. So when we talk about Uranus opposing your moon, we're talking about a life cycle arc, a cultural arc, something that represents something bigger than you, impacting you in the way that, like on a kind of slower, bigger impact level versus like the everyday mundanity of the moon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So what is it? Venus, Mars. What was the other planet that's every 20 to 30 years?
Saturn and Jupiter.
So what's the cycle on those? Do you know, like, are we in any of them right now? Have any of them returned?
So this would be personal to your chart. So if I open up a transit chart, right, and we look at, so this is where all the planets are today, right now, in this moment, out here on this orange. And then this is your chart in the middle. So Jupiter is out here in Cancer. It's hanging out in your 8th house. And Saturn, you would have already had your Saturn return. Saturn is down here in your 4th house. So think about what was happening in your life when you were 28 to 32.
Babies, 2 babies.
That was the time period of your Saturn return. Planets represent so many different things. Like Mercury is the planet of communication. That means that it rules every single object we use to communicate. Files, phones, computers. Pluto is the planet of the underworld. It rules Scorpio, which is your core planetary positions. Almost all of your natal planets are in Scorpio. Pluto is often related to like myths like Hades.
So looking at my chart, can you tell what type of job I should have? Or
yeah, that is something that and that's really actually very relevant to what we've been talking about. So if you want to know what you need to do for work, where you want to go is you want to look at what's happening in your 10th house. This is the section of the sky that relates to our career, which is modern day's way of saying, this is the role you should take in community. That's really what the 10th house is about. We don't have elders, we don't have stories, we don't have rites of passage that help us structure that journey in a way. And it's really meant to represent how you are meant to take, the role you're meant to take up and how you're going to get there, and then who you're going to support in that role. The other place you want to look, and this is where it makes me sound like I'm splitting hairs, is the 6th house, because the 6th house is about work. Now, what's the difference between career and work? Sound the same, right?
right.
Work, the career is the path, the journey, the experience. It's never ending. You're seeing the vision, the long term. The sixth house work is the day to day, everyday grind of what you're doing. It's the ritual, it's the routine, it's the sacredness. That's what the sixth house is about. You want to look at your directions in totality. So in your house, your sixth house is ruled by Taurus. You have Chiron in your sixth house. Your 10th house has no planets. Don't worry, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to have a career. It's ruled by Virgo. And then you have Sagittarius, Gemini, Aries, and Libra as your ruling set of directions. And when I look at your chart, you got a lot of your 10th house and your 6th house are both ruled by earth signs. Your role in the world is based in this ability to act as a healer. Doesn't necessarily mean medicine. Doesn't necessarily mean having that effect of like directly, personally healing somebody. But Virgo, when Virgo rules our 10th house, we are very much related to the myth of Chiron is related to the myth of Chiron. I was like blanking if his name was the same as his planet. And Chiron's myth is he's a centaur and he ends up wanting to be, he's born an abomination. His mother abandons him shortly after birth, asking the gods, I'll do anything for you to take this baby away from me. So they turn her into a lemon tree. And his first wound is core. It's basic. It's our first scar. And from that scar, he's able to teach other people, often students who have also experienced abandonment and rejection, and feel like they matter, that they're important because he's overcome abandonment, rejection, not being able to be loved for who he is and supported and respected for who he is. And he ultimately becomes the most respected teacher of warriors. And so his myth is all about the sacred teacher. And so when we look at the 10th house, your role is it says that something has happened in your early life that has, and you've been working to alchemize it your whole life. And that is what is going to allow you to help other people overcome rejection, overcome this sense of abandonment, which for you is manifesting very much in this LinkedIn presence, as you've described today, of wanting to help people that are being abandoned by the system that's supposed to help them, abandoned by the relationships that are supposed to help them, abandoned by the jobs that are supposed to be their sense of security. And then if we look at your 6th house, which is your sacred work, Chiron is natally there.
Wow.
It is. But it's in the sign of Taurus. And so Taurus is slightly a different flavor than Virgo, both earth. But Taurus is Virgo is very precise. Virgo wants data. Virgo wants to do it in a material fashion. They want data. They want spreadsheets. They want it on a timeline. Taurus is more like, you gotta plant the seeds and then let them take root, and you gotta let them bloom and blossom. And it's a slower process. So your daily work, the way that you achieve becoming this teacher, becoming this healer. And I'll send you like the myth of Chiron after this so you can really read into it.
Yeah.
Is you have to allow for things to be seasoned. Your process needs to be oriented to what season you're in. Like and that could be quite literal. You live in Florida, so you're going to have more of a static season where everything is, it's not like there's a strong winter, summer, spring, fall, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the sun isn't setting earlier, right? So this is a time period that we naturally slow down a little bit more. And so what I would do is I would get familiar with what happens in your area of the world and how its seasonality is impacted, and getting really familiar with those nuances of the seasonality change and what makes sense for you seasonally. Also, being a woman, you can literally be like, okay, I feel the best I feel the most full of energy when there's a full moon on, and just following those kind of cycles. Those are some examples of ways that you can look at your sacred work being impacted by what's happening this season.
This is crazy. I love it. Okay, guys, listen. So, Jem, do you do readings, like astrological readings for people?
Yes, I do. I do these, and I have an astrology group that people can join, and you get a weekly transit reading every single week. So basically, what we were doing earlier when we were looking at this, I take what's happening here and I tell you, hey, this is what your week ahead is going to look like.
Wow. And where do people sign up for that? I love that.
I have a website where you can JP Ember. This is my astrology website. And I do all kinds of readings. I do, if you want to know what's going on with your Saturn, if you want to know what's going on with your Jupiter return, if you want to do like a general growth reading, get into know who you are, I do something called the creation story, which is a reading where we look at how are you being, basically a lot like what I just did, but much deeper. But if you also just wanted to do like a focused reading like we just did, what's going on with your career or how you can get where you need to go or what your role should look like or what's going to make you feel the most fulfilled, like we can do that. A lot of people also want to look at love and romance. That's also a very popular topic. Like I want to find, love and I want to feel fulfilled in that relationship. And how can I do that? And so those are also things that we do.
That's amazing.
And I could talk about this for literally hours and hours.
Yeah, thank you for reading me. This was very informational. I am a teacher. Who knew?
An alchemical teacher. And alchemy is the magic of, or the ability to transform one thing into another. The ability to transform, in Chiron's case, rejection and abandonment into sacred and warrior. You need to keep writing because it's how people can connect to you. It's how you're going to form and continue to build relationships. Writing, talking, singing, anything that has to do with any sort of communication, keep doing it. It's part of how you're going to go. Keep designing, keep making, keep creating. Don't ever stop doing that. And the more you amplify and center in your voice, of what makes you feel powerful, what makes you thrive in the world, the more you're going to become the leader that you've already proven yourself to be.
You are the glitterati. Everyone who I talk to, it's just, I don't know how I came up with that name, but we are the glitterati. The glitter rebellion.
Yeah.
I just feel like the more happiness you put into the world and the more you make people laugh, like that's literally the point, right? It's just connecting with people and being happy and laughing and being thankful for, what we have, that we're alive today and breathing.
Now you're meant to be on this stage, but I also know you're somebody who wears her heart on her sleeve, and how much you care about the world is very present. How much you care about people. You got a lot of integrity, and your humor is gonna keep you safe in a world that will try to keep you alive.
You're right about everything you said. It's so true. Thank you so much, Jem, for being on Unemployable. It has been revolutionary, I think. I learned a lot about myself. Guys, if you want to learn more about Jem, I'm going to link all of her websites on the show notes and when I post this podcast, so you'll be able to make your own friends with her, get in touch with her personally. And yeah, thanks. Thanks for this.
Thank you for having me. I'm super grateful to have been asked to be in this space, in this container.
Yeah, all our voices matter. Glitterati, reclaim your plot. Have a great day. And can't wait for episode 7. Thanks, everyone.
Get up on your feet, this is a shakedown.